Hey everyone, got your teaching exams coming up? Well, you are in exactly the right place. Today we're going to tackle a topic that's pretty much guaranteed to show up. Communication strategies. Seriously, think of this as your secret weapon to absolutely nail that part of the exam.
Okay, let's just jump right in. Picture this, because you're going to live this moment like a million times. Your student's in the middle of a story, they're excited, and then bam, they hit a wall. They just don't have the word. So what happens next? Do they clam up, just stop talking, or do they figure out a way around it? That moment, right there, that's what this is all about.
So that brings us to our first section, bridging the communication gap. And the answer to that question, how do they get past that roadblock, is by using a whole toolbox of what we call communication strategies. These are basically the clever, in-the-moment tricks that learners pull out to keep the conversation going, even when they're missing a few words.
All right, section 2, the core concept and theory. Now, this is where you want to grab your notebook, because for the exam, you've got to know the theory. We're going to break down exactly what these strategies are, their main features, and, this is super important, the 2 key names you have to drop in your answer.
So here's the official definition you'll want to have in your back pocket. Think of communication strategies as problem-solving tools. And you know, the most important thing to get straight is that using them is not a sign of weakness or failure. Not at all. It's actually the complete opposite. It shows that a learner is actively fighting to communicate, to stay in the game. Okay, let's tick through these main features real quick. First, their problem-solving nature. That's obvious, right? They're trying to solve the problem of I don't know the word. Second, they have a compensatory function. They make up for, or compensate for, the missing language. Then there's their interactional value. This is huge. They keep the conversation from dying. And finally, they're dynamic and context dependent. This just means a student won't use the same trick every time. It all depends on the situation.
Okay, pen and paper ready? Here's key name number 1 for your exam. Selinker. You see Selinker, you think inner language. What's that? It's basically the idea that a learner has their own unique, evolving language system that's somewhere between their native language and the target language. And Selinker argued that these communication strategies, they're a totally normal, even necessary part of that system.
And here's your second must-know name. Well, names, actually. Canal and Swain. These 2 are giants in the field. When you see their names, I want your brain to immediately scream strategic competence. They created this big model of what it means to be a good communicator, and they gave our topic its own special category. We're going to circle back to their full model in a bit, but for now, just burn it in your brain. Canal and Swain, strategic competence.
All right, moving on to section 3, the 2 paths. So when that student hits that wall, they're at a fork in the road. They have 2 basic options. And for your exam, you absolutely have to know the difference between these 2.
Okay, so on one path, you've got your avoidance strategies. This is pretty much what it sounds like. The learner just gives up on the idea. They might change the subject or just abandon the sentence altogether. But then on the other path, you have the good stuff, achievement strategies. This is when the learner digs in and tries to achieve communication despite the gap. They try to find another way. And, well, as teachers, this is the path we want to pave for them, right?
So what do these achievement strategies actually look like? Well, here's a quick list of the greatest hits. You've got paraphrase, just saying it in a different way. Then there's circumlocution, which is a fancy word for describing around something. You know, like saying, it's a metal thing for opening wine instead of corkscrew. Some learners get really creative and do some word coinage, just making up a word that sounds right. And of course, the classics, borrowing a word from their first language, straight up appealing for assistance, how do you say, and using mime and gestures. All of this shows a learner who's really trying.
Okay, section 4, the big picture, competence. So we've looked at all these little tactics, but where do they fit in the grand scheme of things? Well, remember Canale and Swain? Let's zoom out and look at their full model, because these strategies are a massive piece of the puzzle. So, Canale and Swain said that being a good communicator, having communicative competence, is about more than just knowing grammar rules. It's actually 4 things working together. You need grammatical competence, yep, the rules. You need sociolinguistic competence, knowing how to be polite or formal or funny. You need discourse competence, knowing how to build a conversation or a story. And then, number 4, the hero of our story, strategic competence. This is the one that kicks in to save the day when one of the other 3 fails. Yeah, this quote really nails it. Strategic competence is what lets you compensate for breakdowns and repair misunderstandings. It's basically your communication first aid kit. For our students whose vocabulary and grammar are still growing, this skill isn't just a nice to have, it's absolutely critical.
It's what gives them the confidence to even try. All right, Section 5, from theory to classroom. We've got the theory down, we know the key names, but the million-dollar question for any teacher is, so what? What do I do with this on a Tuesday morning? Let's talk about that.
Here's the bottom line. Your role is to model and teach these skills. We can't just cross our fingers and hope our students figure this stuff out on their own. Nope, we have to teach it directly. You need to show them how it's done. So next time you're teaching and you blank on a word, don't just look it up. Think out loud. Say, oh, what's that word? You know, the thing you use to model that struggle and that problem-solving process.
And then you build a gym for them to practice in. You create activities where they have to use these strategies. Information gap activities are golden for this, where one student has a piece of a puzzle and the other needs it. They're forced to describe and clarify. Role plays, simulations, problem-solving tasks, anything that throws them into a situation where they have to negotiate and really work to be understood. That's where the real learning happens.
Okay, last section here, assessing and concluding. So if we're going to teach it, we should probably know how to assess it, right? But how in the world do you put a grade on this stuff? Let's talk about that, and then we'll wrap it all up.
This requires a pretty big mindset shift for a lot of teachers. When you're assessing this, you have to look past the grammar mistakes. The real question isn't, was it perfect? The question is, was it successful? Did they get their point across? Did they manage to keep the conversation going? That's the win you're looking for.
And you don't have to just guess. There are actual tools for this. You can use simple observation skills while students are doing pair work. Just a checklist where you tick off when you see them using different strategies. Or you can get a bit more detailed with analytical rubrics, which help you judge how well they use the strategy to actually get the job done. Okay, everybody, this is it. This is your exam answer in a nutshell. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Number 1, strategies are essential tools, not failures. Number 2, they are a crucial part of communicative competence, and don't forget to mention Canal and Swain. Number 3, teaching them builds confidence and makes learners more independent. And number 4, your job as the teacher is to model these strategies and give your students a ton of chances to practice.
So we end on this question, which is really at the heart of what we do as teachers. When you teach these strategies, you're giving your students more than just vocabulary workarounds. You're giving them resilience. You're giving them the courage to take risks and to keep talking. You are, quite literally, giving them their voice. So the real question is, how are you going to empower your students to speak with confidence?